They say the most important discoveries happen when you're not looking for them. William Miller certainly wasn't looking for anything except peace and quiet when his Bentley pulled into the circular drive that Wednesday afternoon, 3 hours earlier than planned. But what he found in his own living room, his daughter's nanny standing before a whiteboard covered in advanced mathematics, teaching his 8-year-old with the skill of a master educator, would become the discovery that changed not just his life, but his understanding of what true genius looks like. The Bentley's engine purred to silence in the circular driveway 3 hours ahead of schedule. William Miller's canceled Tokyo meeting, leaving him with an unfamiliar commodity: time at home in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. His Armani suit still carried the tension of boardroom battles. His eyes, sharp and calculating from analyzing quarterly projections, now craved nothing more than silence, an aged scotch, and the solitude of his study. But what he discovered when he stepped through those grand double doors stopped him mid-stride, his leather briefcase still gripped in one hand. His daughter's nanny, dressed in her crisp black and white uniform, stood before a professional whiteboard in the mansion's sun-drenched living room, her hand moving with practiced precision as she sketched complex calculus equations. And there, seated at the antique mahogany desk, the one that had cost more than most cars, sat 8-year-old Emily, her eyes bright with fascination, watching Maya as though she were witnessing magic itself. The nanny wasn't folding laundry. She wasn't preparing afternoon snacks. She wasn't tidying the endless rooms of this Silicon Valley estate. She was teaching, no, mentoring, his daughter with mathematics so advanced William himself hadn't touched it since his Stanford days. For a breathless moment, he thought exhaustion was playing tricks on his mind. Nannies don't teach differential equations. But the whiteboard didn't lie. The formulas were real, sophisticated, precise. And so was her brilliance. William froze in the arched doorway, his mouth slightly parted in disbelief. The afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows cast a golden glow on the surreal scene before him. Maya didn't notice him standing there. Her entire focus was on Emily, who scribbled notes with an intensity William had never seen in his daughter before. "Remember, Emily," Maya was saying, her voice warm but firm. "Mathematics isn't about memorizing formulas. It's about seeing patterns. It's about learning the language the universe speaks to us." The words struck William like a physical blow. He couldn't remember the last time he'd taught his daughter anything meaningful, anything beyond "work hard" or "don't disappoint me." His world had shrunk to acquisitions, IPOs, venture capital deals, and emergency board meetings. Emily's world had been left to tutors who came and went, expensive enrichment programs, and nannies who kept her fed, clean, and out of his way. Yet here was Maya, the woman he barely acknowledged when passing her in the hallways, giving Emily something he'd never managed to provide: inspiration. William's mind reeled. Memories flooded back in fragments. Maya had joined their household 18 months ago. Quiet, efficient, professional. She was always polite, never intrusive, always seeming to fade into the background of their luxurious existence. To him, she'd been just another employee on the household payroll, nothing more than a line item in his monthly expenses. But now, watching her explain the elegance of mathematical proofs with the confidence of a seasoned educator, he realized something that made his chest tighten with shame. He had never truly seen her, never asked where she came from, what she'd studied, what dreams she might have abandoned, what brilliance she might be hiding beneath that uniform. Emily's small voice shattered his trance. "Miss Maya, does this mean I can solve problems that even grown-ups can't?" Maya smiled gently, her dark eyes radiating warmth. "Yes. Sweetheart, you're capable of far more than anyone has told you. All it takes is curiosity and someone who believes in you." William felt his throat constrict. Belief. That word haunted him. For years he'd built companies, disrupted industries, created technology used by millions. But he'd been too much of a coward, too busy, to truly enter his daughter's world. He justified his absence as providing for her future. But standing there, invisible in his own home, he realized money could never buy the spark he was witnessing in Emily's eyes. He wanted to retreat, to back away before anyone notices, process this alone, regain control of the situation. But his feet wouldn't move. His heart demanded answers that only truth could provide. Finally, Maya turned slightly, her marker mid-equation, and gasped when she saw him standing there. The confidence that had filled her teaching posture melted instantly into nervous deference. "Mr. Miller, I didn't expect you home so early." Emily whirled around too, her face lighting up with pure joy. "Daddy, look what Miss Maya is teaching me. It's real mathematics, the kind that actual scientists and engineers use." William forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes, but his gaze remained locked on Maya. "What exactly is going on here?" he asked, his voice steadier than the chaos churning inside him. Maya lowered her eyes, her earlier authority crumbling into anxious humility. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overstep my boundaries. Emily was curious about some equations she found in my—" She stopped abruptly, as if she'd revealed too much. "In your what?" William pressed. "My old notebook," Maya whispered, barely audible. "From when I used to study mathematics. Before—" Her words trailed into weighted silence. And in that suspended moment, everything William Miller thought he knew about his life, his home, and the people in it, began to unravel. Before we continue this powerful story of hidden genius and unexpected transformation, if you believe in second chances, the power of seeing people beyond their roles, and recognizing brilliance wherever it appears, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories that challenge us to look deeper deserve to be shared, and your support makes that possible. That night, William Miller couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he sat in his home office, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his troubled face as he typed Maya's full name into search engines, academic databases, anything that might explain what he'd witnessed. What he discovered would force him to confront an uncomfortable truth. The most valuable person in his home had been invisible to him for 18 months. And Emily, his daughter, his heir, the child expensive tutors had labeled average, had been hiding a gift that Maya had seen in a single week. But to understand how this moment shattered everything, we need to go back. Back to that Wednesday afternoon when William's carefully constructed world first began to crack. The marble foyer stretched before him like a museum gallery, pristine, expensive, and utterly lifeless. William's Italian leather shoes clicked against the floor as he loosened his silk tie, his mind still churning through the Tokyo deal that had collapsed 2 hours into negotiations. He'd built his tech empire on reading patterns, predicting outcomes, staying 3 steps ahead. Coming home at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday wasn't part of any pattern he recognized. The house felt different in daylight, colder somehow. Or perhaps he'd never noticed before. He moved through the great room, past furniture that cost more than luxury cars, beneath chandeliers imported from Vienna. Everything precisely arranged. Everything perfect. Everything empty. This was what success looked like, he'd told himself for years. But success had never felt quite this hollow. Then he heard it, a sound so unexpected it stopped him mid-step. Laughter. Emily's laughter, bright and genuine, echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. When was the last time he'd heard that sound? Weeks? Months? His daughter laughed so rarely these days, always seeming withdrawn during their brief dinners together, always distant during their rushed goodnight rituals. William followed the sound like a man in a trance. The grand living room doors stood partially open, afternoon sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. And there, framed in that golden light, like a painting that made no sense, was a scene that rewired something fundamental in his brain. Maya stood before the whiteboard. When had they gotten a whiteboard? Her crisp uniform somehow lending her authority rather than diminishing it. Complex equations covered the board in her neat handwriting. Derivatives, integrals, functions that belonged in university classrooms, not in the home of an 8-year-old. But it was Emily who truly shocked him. His daughter, the child who squirmed through homework, who daydreamed through tutoring sessions, who'd been described by every expensive educator as pleasant but unfocused, sat completely still at the antique desk. Her curly brown hair fell across her shoulders as she bent over her notebook, her small hand moving rapidly, her face fixed in an expression of intense concentration he'd never seen before. She looked alive. "Now integrate this function," Maya was saying, her voice carrying a warmth and certainty that seemed to fill the enormous room. "Remember what we discussed about the power rule. You've got this, Emily." William's chest tightened with something he couldn't name. This was his house, his daughter, his employee. Yet he felt like an intruder witnessing something private, something sacred that had been happening right under his nose. How long had this been going on? His mind cataloged contradictions faster than he could process them. Maya was a nanny, not a teacher. Emily struggled with basic math, didn't she? Those equations were advanced calculus. He'd barely passed that course at Stanford. Nothing about this made sense. Everything about this felt right in a way that terrified him. Maya turned to write another equation, and her eyes landed on him, standing in the doorway. The marker froze midair. The confidence that had radiated from her posture evaporated instantly, replaced by the nervous deference he was accustomed to seeing. "Mr. Miller." Her voice came out smaller, uncertain. I didn't expect you home so early." Before William could form words, Emily's voice cut through the thick silence, bright with pride and excitement he'd never heard directed at him. "Daddy, look! Miss Maya is teaching me real mathematics, the kind that actual scientists use." William forced his lips into something resembling a smile, but his eyes never left Maya's face. And in that moment, one question burned through every thought, every assumption, every comfortable certainty he'd ever held. What else don't I know about the woman I trusted with my daughter? The silence in the room felt heavier than any boardroom negotiation William had ever endured. He'd faced down hostile investors, aggressive competitors, journalists hunting for scandals. But standing in his own living room, watching his employee and his daughter stare at him with vastly different expressions, Maya's fearful, Emily's hopeful, he felt completely out of his depth. "I'm waiting for an explanation," William said, his voice carrying the controlled authority he used in business dealings. But even he could hear the uncertainty beneath it. Maya's fingers tightened around the whiteboard marker. "I was just helping Emily with her homework, Mr. Miller. I didn't mean to—" "That's not homework," William interrupted, gesturing at the whiteboard covered in university-level mathematics. "That's advanced calculus. Emily is 8 years old." "I'm also right here," Emily said quietly, a trace of defiance in her small voice that William had never heard before. He turned to his daughter, softening his tone. "Emily, sweetheart, why don't you show Daddy what you've been working on?" Emily's face lit up. She scrambled from the desk and ran to retrieve a notebook from the nearby bookshelf. A hiding place, William realized with a strange pang. His daughter had been hiding this. She thrust the notebook into his hands, pages falling open to reveal months of work. Advanced equations in Maya's neat handwriting, followed by explanations, diagrams, practice problems. And beneath each lesson, in Emily's careful child script, were solutions. Correct solutions. Pages and pages of them, growing progressively more complex. "Miss Maya has been teaching me since February," Emily said proudly. "Real math, not the baby stuff Mr. Peterson makes me do." William's head snapped up. "Mr. Peterson? The tutor he paid $300 an hour?" He treats me like I'm stupid, Emily said matter-of-factly. He keeps giving me addition problems, when I told him I already know multiplication. Miss Maya actually listens to me. Emily, that's not, Maya started. But Emily wheeled on her with fierce loyalty. It's true. You're the only person who doesn't treat me like I'm stupid, Miss Maya. Daddy pays all these tutors and teachers, and they all talk to me like I'm a baby. But you, her voice cracked slightly, you make me feel smart. The words landed like physical blows. William looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone he barely recognized. When had she become so articulate, so passionate, so present? How long have you been bored, Emily? He asked quietly. She shrugged, suddenly looking very small. Forever, I guess. Nobody ever asks what I want to learn. They just tell me what I'm supposed to know. William's gaze shifted back to Maya, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the expensive wallpaper. And you recognize this? Yes, sir, Maya admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily is exceptionally bright. I could see it immediately. She just needed what? William pressed. Someone who believed in her potential, instead of deciding what that potential should be. The simple statement cut deeper than any accusation could have. William thought of the parade of tutors, the elite private school, the enrichment programs, all chosen by him, all meant to shape Emily into his vision of success. Had he ever once asked her what she wanted? He cleared his throat. Maya, I'd like you to stay after Emily goes to bed. We need to discuss this further. Am I? Maya's voice trembled. Am I being let go? Please don't fire her, Daddy. Emily's eyes welled with tears. Please, I'll stop learning math if you want. I'll do whatever you say. Just don't make Miss Maya leave. No one is being fired, William said, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was saying. But there are things I need to understand. Maya, can you stay? She nodded mutely. Good. Emily, it's time for bed. But Daddy? Bed, sweetheart. We'll talk about this tomorrow. 2 hours later, after a bedtime routine that felt more strained than usual, William stood in the hallway outside Emily's door. He could hear his daughter's voice through the crack, see Maya sitting on the edge of the bed. You'll come back tomorrow, right? Emily was asking, her small hand gripping Maya's. Of course I will, Maya assured her gently. Promise you won't let him make you stop teaching me. Emily's whisper was loud enough to carry into the hallway. You're the only one who believes in me, Miss Maya. The only one. William stood frozen, his hand halfway to the doorknob. His daughter's words echoed in the silence, cutting deeper than any business rival's insult, any failed deal, any professional setback ever could. The only one who believes in me. When had he stopped believing in his own daughter? Or had he ever really started? William's study felt different with Maya in it. In 18 months, she'd never been invited past the threshold. This room, with its leather chairs, mahogany desk, walls lined with books he never read, and awards he'd stopped noticing, was his sanctuary. But tonight, it felt like a confessional. Maya perched on the edge of the chair across from his desk, still wearing her uniform, her posture rigid with nervous energy. William poured himself a scotch, then hesitated, and poured a second glass, sliding it across the desk toward her. I'm not going to fire you, he said, settling into his chair, but I need to understand what I walked into today. Maya's hands wrapped around the glass, but didn't lift it. I overstepped. I should have asked permission before. Stop apologizing. William interrupted gently. Just tell me the truth. Who are you, Maya? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She looked up, meeting his eyes for perhaps the first time since she'd started working for him. I'm not sure what you mean, sir. Where did you learn to teach like that? Those weren't tutoring tricks. That was real pedagogy. A long silence stretched between them. Maya's fingers traced the rim of the glass. When she finally spoke, Her voice was so quiet, he had to lean forward to hear. I graduated top of my class from MIT. Master's degree in mathematics. William felt the words like a physical impact. MIT? Full scholarship. I was going to get my PhD, but... She trailed off, and he saw years of pain compressed into that silence. My father died. My mother couldn't work. I have 3 younger siblings. Someone had to step up. So, you became a professor? A ghost of a smile crossed Maya's face. Community college. It wasn't MIT, but I loved it. My students, most of them were first-generation college students, working 2 jobs, convinced they weren't math people. I published research on teaching methods that actually reached them. For 3 years, I thought I was building something. What happened? Budget cuts. The words came out flat, factual. The state slashed funding. My department lost half its positions. Last hired, first fired. That's how it works. They kept the tenured faculty, the ones who'd been there 20 years. She paused. I was also one of only 2 black women on the mathematics faculty. I can't prove that mattered, but... She didn't need to finish. William had sat in enough boardrooms to know how these decisions got made, how bias hid behind bureaucratic language. I had student loans. My siblings needed support. My mother's medical bills were piling up. Maya's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened around the glass. I couldn't afford pride. Your household manager posted the nanny position. Excellent salary, benefits, housing stipend. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. That was 18 months ago. Yes. William studied her face, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not the silent woman who prepared Emily's meals and folded laundry. Not the employee who faded into the background during his rare appearances at home, but a person, a brilliant person whose dreams had been crushed by circumstances he'd never had to face. When did you realize about Emily? He asked. Maya's expression softened. The first week. She has this way of asking questions. Not just what, but why and how. She'd pick up patterns in everything. The tile floor, the garden layout, even the way I organized her bookshelf. Most kids that age don't notice those things. Her tutors called her average. Her tutors were teaching below her level. There was fire in Maya's voice now, the same authority he'd heard when she was teaching. They came with their prepared lesson plans, their one-size-fits-all curriculum. They never stopped to ask what she needed. Emily isn't average, Mr. Miller. She's extraordinary. She just needed someone to see it. And you saw it. I saw myself, Maya said quietly. A mind hungry to learn, but everyone around her was feeding her scraps. I couldn't... Her voice caught. I couldn't watch that happen to another little girl. Not when I knew I could help. William felt something crack open in his chest. He'd spent millions on his daughter's education. Elite schools, private tutors, enrichment programs. And the person who'd actually reached her was the one he paid the least, noticed the least, valued the least. Why didn't you tell me any of this when I hired you? He asked. Your credentials, your background. Why keep it hidden? Maya finally met his eyes fully, and what he saw there made him look away in shame. Would it have mattered? She asked softly. People see the uniform, Mr. Miller. They never see the person wearing it. You looked at me and saw a nanny. If I'd told you I had a master's from MIT, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was lying, overreaching, trying to be something I'm not? William opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. Because she was right. If she'd mentioned MIT in her interview, he probably would have dismissed it as exaggeration. He would have wondered why someone with those credentials wanted to be a nanny. He would have suspected her motives. He would have done exactly what she feared. I don't have an answer, he admitted finally. And that's what shames me most. Sleep was impossible. William sat in his home office at 2 a.m. the glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. The conversation with Maya had ended hours ago, but her words still echoed in his mind. People see the uniform. They never see the person wearing it. He typed her full name into the search bar. Maya Elizabeth Johnson. The results loaded slowly, and then his screen flooded with academic papers, citations, conference presentations. William leaned forward, his exhaustion forgotten as he clicked through link after link. Journal of Mathematics Education, Volume 47. Recognizing and Nurturing Mathematical Giftedness in Underserved Populations, by Maya E. Johnson, M.S. He opened the paper. The abstract alone made him pause. Traditional assessment methods systematically overlook mathematically gifted children from non-traditional backgrounds. This study demonstrates that when educators are trained to recognize alternative indicators of mathematical aptitude, pattern recognition in everyday contexts, intuitive problem-solving, persistent why questioning, they identify gifted students at 3 times the expected rate. William scrolled through pages of rigorous research, elegant proofs, pedagogical insights that would have impressed his company's top data scientists. The woman who folded his daughter's laundry had written this. The woman he'd never had a real conversation with until tonight. He found more papers. Teaching awards from her community college. Glowing recommendations from colleagues. Ms. Johnson has a rare gift for making complex mathematics accessible and exciting. Her students consistently outperform their peers. She sees potential where others see limitations. His chest tightened with something between shame and anger. Anger at himself, at a system that could waste talent like this, at his own willful blindness. William closed the browser and opened his filing cabinet, pulling out Emily's academic files. Thick folders from Brookside Academy, reports from the parade of tutors he'd hired over the years. He spread them across his desk, like evidence at a trial. Emily shows average aptitude for mathematics. Recommend continued practice with basic operations. Mr. Peterson, March student, demonstrates difficulty maintaining focus during lessons. Suggest shorter problem sets. Ms. Chen, November. Emily is a pleasant child, but shows limited natural interest in mathematics. Brookside Academy Progress Report. Every word now read like an accusation. Not of Emily, of him. He'd accepted these assessments without question, had nodded along when teachers suggested his daughter was simply not a math person. He'd never asked Emily what she thought. Never noticed that she was bored, frustrated, hungry for something more. What kind of father did that make him? William pulled up his home security system, something he'd installed for safety, but never actually used. The footage archives went back months. He scrubbed through recordings until he found what he was looking for: Emily's tutoring sessions. He watched Mr. Peterson, the $300 an hour tutor, droning through multiplication tables while Emily stared out the window, her pencil tapping listlessly against the desk. The tutor never looked up from his workbook, never noticed her disengagement, never asked a single question that required more than rote memorization. Then, he found footage of Maya and Emily from weeks ago. The difference was staggering. Emily sat forward in her chair, her entire body alert. She was asking questions faster than Maya could answer them, pointing at the whiteboard, sketching diagrams in her notebook. When she got a problem wrong, instead of shutting down, she laughed and tried again. Maya didn't lecture. She guided, questioned, challenged. And Emily blazed under that attention. William watched his daughter transform on the screen, becoming someone he barely recognized. Someone confident, curious, alive. He'd been in the same house, just rooms away, and he'd missed all of it. A memory surfaced, unbidden and painful. Catherine, his late wife, in the hospital during her final days. Emily was only 5 then, too young to fully understand what was happening. Catherine had gripped his hand with what little strength she had left. "Promise me something, William," she'd whispered, her voice already fading. Don't let our daughter become just another privileged child who never reaches her potential. Don't let money be a substitute for really seeing her. Promise me you'll be present. Promise me you'll really see her." He'd promised. Of course he'd promised. He'd meant it with everything in him. But when had he last kept that promise? When had he done anything but throw money at Emily's life and call it parenting? William's hands trembled as he closed the security footage. The sky outside his office window was beginning to lighten, dawn creeping across the Silicon Valley hills. He needed to act. But how? Every instinct screamed at him to take control, to manage this situation like a business problem. Hire Maya as an official tutor. Draw up contracts. Establish clear parameters and metrics for success. But another voice, quieter but more insistent, whispered that maybe control was the problem. Maybe for once in his life, he needed to step back, to trust someone else's expertise, to admit that he didn't have all the answers. His phone shattered the pre-dawn silence, its harsh ring making him jump. The screen showed his head of security calling. At 5:30 a.m., that couldn't be good. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Mr. Miller, I'm sorry to call so early, but we have a situation." Marcus's voice was tense. "Someone's been asking questions about your household staff, specifically about Emily's nanny. One of the estate's security guards was approached yesterday by someone claiming to be a family friend." William's blood ran cold. What kind of questions? Her background, her qualifications, how long she's been with Emily. "And sir, there's more. We spotted a photographer outside the gates 20 minutes ago. Press credentials from Valley Insider. You know what that means." William did know. Valley Insider was the tabloid that fed on Silicon Valley scandals, real or manufactured. If they were sniffing around, they'd already built a narrative. "Get rid of him," William said sharply. "We can move him off your property, but if there's a story brewing, there's no story. Sir, with respect, someone thinks there is. This has the hallmarks of a targeted leak. Someone wants this to become news." William's mind raced. Who would... Then it clicked. The board. His company's board of directors had been pressuring him for months to be more visible, more focused, to stop distancing himself from day-to-day operations. Several of them had made pointed comments about his parenting choices, his household management decisions. If they thought they could use this to undermine him. "Double security on the perimeter," William ordered. "No one gets near this house. And Marcus, find out who's feeding information to the press. I want names." He ended the call, his decision crystallizing with cold clarity. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. But this time, he'd be fighting for what actually mattered. By midday, William's phone was exploding with notifications. The headline blazed across every tech news site and tabloid: "Tech billionaire's daughter being tutored by domestic worker. Child welfare concerns raised." The article was a masterclass in innuendo. It mentioned Emily's unconventional education, raised questions about appropriate boundaries, and featured quotes from anonymous sources concerned about a child being left in the care of unqualified staff. Maya's name was mentioned exactly once. Her MIT degree? Not at all. William stood at his office window, watching news vans assemble across the street like vultures. Paparazzi clustered at the estate gates, cameras with telephoto lenses pointed at every window. One had already gotten a shot of Maya closing the curtains in Emily's room. The photo was captioned, "Mystery, Nanny hides from questions." His assistant buzzed through. "Mr. Miller, the board is convening an emergency video call in 5 minutes. They're insisting you join." Of course they were. The faces on his screen were a mix of concern and barely concealed satisfaction. Richard Chen, the board chairman, spoke first, his voice measured but firm. "William, we need to discuss damage control. This story is trending on 3 platforms. Our shareholders are nervous." "Nervous about what exactly?" William asked coldly. "About my daughter receiving an excellent education." "About the optics. interjected Patricia Morrison, the board member who'd been angling to replace him for months. A billionaire's child being taught by domestic staff? It raises questions about your judgment, about safety protocols. Maya has a master's degree from MIT. William cut in. She's published research in mathematics education. She's more qualified than half the tutors I've paid thousands of dollars to. Silence on the call. Then Jonathan Shaw, his longtime lawyer and supposed friend, spoke carefully. William, credentials aside, the narrative has gotten away from you. The board's recommendation is simple. Thank her for her service, provide a generous severance, and immediately hire someone from an established educational firm. Someone whose background can withstand media scrutiny. Someone white, you mean? William said flatly. Another uncomfortable silence. That's not what anyone is saying, Patricia said quickly. But we need to think about the company's reputation, about Emily's future. This has become a distraction. My daughter isn't a distraction, William said, and ended the call. His social media team had compiled the online reaction. Hashtags were trending. The day Miller Nannygate. Privilege gone wrong. You're save Emily. The takes were vicious and contradictory. Some defended Maya. Woman with MIT degree can't get a teaching job but gets dragged for helping a child? This is America. Others attacked William. Billionaire too cheap to hire real teachers? Negligent father alert. And then there were the racist comments, the ones that made his stomach turn. Of course he hired her as a nanny, probably paying below minimum wage. What's her real agenda with that little girl? These people always have an angle. The truth had drowned in a sea of prejudice and assumption, just like Maya had known it would. His phone rang. Brookside Academy. Principal Sarah Winter's voice dripped with false concern. William, I hope you and Emily are managing during this difficult time. The school board and I have been discussing the situation, and we feel it's important to have a conversation about Emily's educational environment at home. Her educational environment is excellent, William said. I'm sure you believe that. Sarah's tone sharpened. But given the media attention and the concerns being raised about appropriate supervision, we need to ensure Brookside's standards are being maintained. Perhaps it would be best if Emily's unconventional tutoring were discontinued, at least until this blows over. The subtext was crystal clear. Get rid of Maya, or we'll get rid of Emily. I'll take that under advisement, William said, and hung up before he said something he'd regret. That evening, Maya appeared at his office door. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red, her normally composed expression shattered. She held a folded letter in trembling hands. Mr. Miller, I'm resigning, effective immediately. Maya, please, just let me finish. Her voice broke. I can't let Emily suffer because of me. I thought I could help her, thought I could make a difference. But this is what always happens to people like me. We step out of line, and the whole world reminds us where we belong. That's not true, isn't it? Tears spilled down her cheeks. They're calling you negligent because you let someone like me near your daughter. They're questioning Emily's safety because of who I am. This is my fault for not knowing my place. For thinking I could be more than... Stop! William stood, his voice cutting through her spiral. This isn't your fault, and I am not accepting your resignation. Maya stared at him, confusion and despair warring in her expression. William took a breath, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Every business instinct, every advisor, every rational voice screamed that he should take the easy path. Let Maya go quietly. Protect the company. Protect his reputation. But when he closed his eyes, he saw his daughter's face on that security footage. Alive, engaged, seen, and he knew exactly what Catherine would have told him to do. I'm calling a press conference for tomorrow morning, he said. 10 a.m. And Maya, you're going to be standing right beside me. The conference room at the Fairmont Hotel buzzed with predatory energy. Every major news outlet had sent reporters. Cameras lined the back wall, their red recording lights like hostile eyes. William stood backstage, adjusting his tie for the third time, watching the chaos through a gap in the curtain. Beside him, Maya looked like she might be sick. She'd changed from her uniform into a simple navy dress. William had insisted, but she still carried herself with the nervous posture of someone waiting for the axe to fall. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "It's not too late to change your mind." "Yes, it is," William said. "It was too late the moment I saw who you really were and chose to finally look." His PR team had begged him to reconsider. Jonathan had threatened to quit as his lawyer. The board had scheduled an emergency vote on his leadership. But standing here now, watching reporters sharpen their knives, William felt more certain than he had about anything in years. "Ready?" he asked Maya. She shook her head. "No, but let's do it anyway." The room fell silent as they walked to the podium. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. William saw the hungry expressions, the prepared narratives, the journalists already typing headlines before he'd said a word. He gripped the podium and began. "My name is William Miller, and I called this press conference to address the speculation about my daughter's education. But before I do, I need to admit something that shames me. I've been a terrible father." That got their attention. Pens stilled. Cameras zoomed closer. "I hired the best tutors money could buy, enrolled my daughter in the most elite private school, provided every advantage wealth can purchase. And never once, not once, did I ask Emily if she was actually learning anything, if she was happy, if she felt seen." His voice roughened. "I was so busy building my company that I forgot to build a relationship with my own child. That's not negligence caused by my staff. That's negligence I own entirely." He gestured to Maya, who stood rigid beside the podium, her dignity intact despite her terror. "This is Maya Johnson. For 18 months, she's worked in my home as Emily's nanny. And in that time, I never bothered to learn that she graduated top of her class from MIT with a master's degree in mathematics, that she's published groundbreaking research on identifying and nurturing mathematical giftedness in underserved populations, that she was a professor whose students adored her before budget cuts destroyed her career." William pulled out a folder, holding up Maya's academic papers. "This woman has credentials that rival my company's senior engineers. She's brilliant, dedicated, and passionate about education. And I was so blinded by her job title, so blinded by my own class prejudices, that I never bothered to ask who she really was." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some journalists looked uncomfortable, others skeptical. "You want to talk about my daughter's education? Let's talk about it." William displayed Emily's recent work on the screen behind him. Complex mathematical proofs, elegant solutions, work that would impress high school students, much less an 8-year-old. "This is what Emily has accomplished in 6 months under Maya's guidance. She's not being harmed. She's finally being seen." A reporter shouted, "But Mr. Miller, surely you understand the concern?" "Do I?" William interrupted, his voice sharp. "Let me ask you something, all of you. Why did you assume the worst? When you heard that my daughter was being taught by someone on my household staff, why was your first thought danger instead of, how wonderful?" He paused, letting the question hang. Was it because Maya is my employee, or was it because she's a black woman? The room went dead silent. "Because I can tell you with absolute certainty, if Maya were a white man with an MIT degree teaching my daughter mathematics, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be calling it innovative, progressive, a modern approach to education." "Mr. Miller, that's not fair," a journalist started. "Isn't it? Read your own headlines. Domestic worker, unqualified staff, concerning boundaries. You never mentioned her master's degree, never investigated her credentials. You saw a black woman in a service position and assumed incompetence, just like I did." The truth of his words landed like physical blows. Some reporters looked away. Others scribbled furiously, perhaps reconsidering their angles. Then, before anyone could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "Daddy?" William turned. Emily stood at the side entrance, still in her school uniform, her small hand gripping the doorframe. His security team had strict instructions to keep her away, but his daughter had apparently inherited his stubbornness. "Emily, what are you—" "I want to talk," she said, walking toward the podium with a determination that silenced every adult in the room. William knelt beside her, whispering urgently, "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Emily looked up at the crowd of journalists and cameras, and despite her trembling hands, her voice came out clear. "Miss Maya didn't hurt me. She saved me." The room held its collective breath. Everyone keeps saying bad things, but they're wrong. Miss Maya is the smartest, kindest person I know. She's the only one who didn't treat me like I was stupid. She's the only one who believed I could do hard things. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I was so bored before, so sad. Nobody listened to me. And now everyone's trying to take her away, and I don't understand why." A camera operator wiped his eyes. Several reporters had stopped typing, just watching this little girl defend the woman who'd changed her life. Maya stepped forward, her own composure finally cracking. She knelt beside Emily, pulling her into a gentle embrace, then stood to face the microphones for the first time. "I didn't do anything special," she said softly, her voice shaking but steady. "I just saw a brilliant child and refused to let her believe she wasn't. Every child deserves that. Every single one. Not just the ones whose parents can afford elite tutors. Not just the ones in the right zip codes. Every child." The room erupted with questions, but William raised his hand, ending the conference. As he guided Maya and Emily backstage, he saw something shifting in the journalists' faces. Not all of them. Some were already typing hit pieces. But enough. Maybe enough. That night, after Emily finally fell asleep, exhausted from the day's emotions, William poured himself a drink and tried to process what they'd just done. His phone rang. Brookside Academy's dean. "William, the board has convened an emergency meeting about Emily's continued enrollment. Given today's spectacle, they're questioning whether Brookside remains the right fit for your family." The subtext was clear. They were considering expulsion. William looked toward Emily's room, then at Maya, who sat in the hallway keeping vigil like a guardian angel. "Schedule the meeting," he said quietly. "I'll be there." Because if they wanted to punish his daughter for his courage, he'd show them exactly what a fight looked like. The boardroom at Brookside Academy felt more like a courtroom. 12 faces stared at William from across the polished conference table. Administrators, wealthy parents who served on the board, an educational consultant brought in specifically for this meeting. Dean Margaret Hastings sat at the head of the table, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes cold. "Thank you for coming, William," she began. "We felt it important to discuss Emily's continued enrollment, given the recent developments." William said nothing, waiting. A mother he vaguely recognized, someone's tech CFO wife, spoke up. "We're all concerned about the, well, unconventional nature of Emily's current educational arrangement. Brookside has very high standards for academic consistency." "Emily's academics have never been stronger," William said flatly. "That's not quite the point," interjected Dr. Richard Sterling, the educational consultant. He pushed his glasses up with practiced academic authority. "It's about appropriate supervision, qualified educators, making sure her foundation aligns with Brookside's rigorous curriculum." There it was, the coded language William had been expecting. "Maya Johnson has a master's degree from MIT," William said. "She's published peer-reviewed research. What qualifications are you suggesting she lacks?" An uncomfortable pause. Dean Hastings cleared her throat. It's not about qualifications per se. It's about cultural fit, about maintaining the standards that Brookside families expect, about ensuring appropriate boundaries between household staff and educational professionals. Say what you actually mean, William said quietly. Another parent, Robert Ashford, old money, investment banking, leaned forward. Look, William, no one's questioning your intentions, but you have to understand how this looks. Your daughter being tutored by your domestic worker? It raises questions about judgment, about priorities, about what happens when people don't stay in their assigned places, William asked. The silence was deafening. Dean Hastings tried to smooth over the tension. We're prepared to offer a compromise. Emily can remain at Brookside, but we'd need assurance that her home tutoring will be conducted by board-approved educators. We have a list of highly qualified professionals. White professionals, William interrupted. That's completely unfair, the CFO's wife protested. This is about maintaining standards, not about race, William finished. Then why is Maya's race the only thing none of you have explicitly mentioned? But everything you've implied. Cultural fit. Appropriate boundaries. You're not concerned about Emily's education. You're concerned about a black woman stepping outside the role you're comfortable with her occupying. Dr. Sterling bristled. Mr. Miller, I resent the implication, and I resent being lectured about my daughter's education by people who've never bothered to learn who she actually is. William stood, the chair scraping against the floor. You're offering me a choice. Sacrifice Maya to keep Emily enrolled here, or lose Emily's spot at Brookside. Is that accurate? Dean Hastings hesitated. We're simply asking for certain assurances. That's what I thought. William picked up his briefcase. Let me make this simple. My daughter will not be attending this school anymore. If you can't see her value, if you can't see Maya's value, then you don't deserve her. Shock rippled around the table. Robert Ashford found his voice first. William, think about what you're doing. Brookside is one of the top schools in the country. Emily's future is exactly what I'm thinking about, William said, walking toward the door. Her future as a person who knows that principle matters more than prestige. That courage matters more than comfort. That some things are worth losing everything for. He left them sitting in stunned silence. Emily took the news better than he expected. She was scared. He could see it in the way her hands twisted together. But there was also something like relief in her eyes. Are you angry with me, Daddy? She asked quietly. Angry? Sweetheart, no. Why would you think that? Because I made all this trouble happen. If I hadn't shown you Miss Maya teaching me. William knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. Emily, you didn't make trouble. You showed me the truth. Do you want to know a secret? She nodded. I never really fit in at that school either, he admitted. I was so worried about you having the right education that I forgot to ask if it was the right education for you. Emily's eyes widened. Really? Really? And you know what you said to me once, when you thought I wasn't listening? You said that your teachers made you feel like being smart was showing off, like you should hide how much you knew. Emily looked down. They did. Whenever I asked questions, they said I was getting ahead of the curriculum, that I needed to wait for everyone else to catch up. Well, you're never going to have to hide again, William promised. We'll find you a place where being brilliant is celebrated, not punished, even if I have to build that place myself. That evening, Maya was pacing in the kitchen when her phone rang. William watched from the doorway as her expression shifted from tentative to stricken. Marcus, slow down. What are people saying? A pause. No, I told you to stay off social media. It's not... Her voice cracked. I know, baby. I know it's hard. But you can't let them... She ended the call and stood frozen, her hand pressed against her mouth. Maya? William approached carefully. "My brother," she whispered. "He's 17. His classmates found the news stories. They're saying terrible things. That I'm a con artist. That I'm trying to trap a rich man. That I—" She couldn't finish. "I'm so sorry. I'm afraid I've ruined your life," Maya said, tears streaming down her face. "Emily's school, your company, your reputation. And now my family is suffering too. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I should have just known my place." "No," William said firmly. "You didn't ruin my life, Maya. You saved it. I just didn't know how broken it was." She looked at him, disbelief warring with desperate hope. "I've been sleepwalking for years," William continued. "Building companies, making money, calling it success while my daughter withered, and I didn't even notice. You woke me up. Yes, it's painful. Yes, there are consequences. But I'd rather be awake and struggling than asleep and dying inside." Maya wiped her eyes. "What happens now?" "Now?" William smiled. The first genuine smile he'd felt in days. "Now we figure out what actually matters." The next morning, William joined his board's video conference. Before anyone could speak, he made his announcement. "Effective immediately, I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence. Patricia, you'll assume interim CEO responsibilities." The board erupted. Patricia looked torn between triumph and concern. Jonathan just stared at him through the screen. "William, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," William interrupted. "For the first time in my life, my family comes first. I'm going to be the father my daughter needs, the man my wife believed I could be. Everything else is secondary." He ended the call before anyone could respond. Emily appeared in his office doorway, hope written across her small face. "Daddy? Does this mean you're staying home?" "It means," William said, pulling her into an embrace, "that I'm finally choosing what matters." 3 months later, the mansion feels different. Smaller somehow, but warmer. The marble floors still gleam under the chandeliers, but now they echo with laughter instead of loneliness. The grand living room, once a sterile showpiece, has become a classroom filled with whiteboards, books scattered across antique tables, and Emily's colorful drawings pinned to walls that once held only expensive art. William sits cross-legged on the Persian rug, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, staring at an equation on the whiteboard with the concentration of a man defusing a bomb. "Daddy, you're overthinking it," Emily giggles, leaning over his notebook. "Remember what Miss Maya said? Look for the pattern first." William groans dramatically. "I built a billion-dollar company, and I can't solve a problem my 8-year-old daughter finds easy." Maya smiles from her chair, no longer wearing the uniform that once defined her. Today, she's in a simple blouse and slacks, her natural hair framing her face. "Mr. Miller, making mistakes is proof you're trying." "William," he corrects gently, as he has every day for 3 months. "Please, just William." The new normal has settled over them like fresh snow, quiet, transformative, covering the old landscape entirely. William has cleared his mornings for lessons, sitting beside Emily, as Maya guides them through mathematics, science, and philosophy. He's discovered that being a terrible student makes him a better father. When he struggles, Emily helps him, her confidence blooming with each explanation she gives. Last week, William offered Maya a new position, not as a nanny, but as Emily's official private educator, with a salary that made her gasp and full autonomy over curriculum design. "I have conditions," Maya had said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Name them. I want to design a program that can be shared with other families, other children like Emily who've been overlooked. This can't just be about one privileged household." William had smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Maya accepted, and something inside her, something that had been locked away for years, began to unlock. She stays up late now, sketching curricula and teaching philosophies by lamplight. Her MIT notebooks finally pulled from storage. She's designing ways to identify mathematical giftedness in children others have dismissed. Methods that look beyond test scores to see genuine curiosity and unconventional thinking. Emily has transformed in ways that shock even Maya. The quiet, withdrawn child has become a young scholar who asks questions that stretch beyond equations. During breaks, she asks Maya about growing up in Atlanta, about her siblings, about the dreams she had to set aside. "Did it hurt?" Emily asked one afternoon. "Having to stop teaching?" Maya paused, choosing honesty over comfort. "Yes, like losing a piece of myself." "Then I'm glad Daddy found that piece," Emily said simply, "because I need all of you." One evening, as William watches Maya guide Emily through a particularly complex proof, a revelation strikes him with the force of lightning. This brilliance, this transformation, this gift, it shouldn't be unique to his household. How many Mayas are out there, working jobs beneath their potential? How many Emilys are being told they're average when they're extraordinary? "Maya," he says, interrupting the lesson. "What if we created something bigger?" She turns, curious. "A foundation. One that identifies overlooked educators, people with your credentials and passion who've been pushed to the margins, and pairs them with gifted children from all backgrounds, not just wealthy ones." Maya's eyes widen. For the first time in years, she allows herself to dream in full color. "The Miller Maya Educational Initiative," she whispers, testing the words. "Just the Maya Initiative," William corrects. "This is your vision. I'm just providing resources." The response is overwhelming. Other families reach out, inspired by William's public stand, wanting Maya's approach for their children. Former colleagues from MIT reconnect, offering research support and validation. A quiet movement begins around recognizing hidden brilliance in unexpected places. The media narrative shifts. What began as scandal becomes inspiration. Articles appear. How one nanny changed Silicon Valley's approach to education. Williams' company stock rises. His board grudgingly admits that his humanity made him a better, more visionary leader. Meanwhile, Emily's former school faces mounting criticism for its rigid, elitist approach to learning. 3 families have already withdrawn their children. On a Friday evening, something unprecedented happens. They sit down for dinner together. Not William eating alone in his study, while Emily eats in the kitchen with Maya. Together, at the dining room table, like a family. Emily, fork paused over her plate, asks the question that's been building for weeks. "Miss Maya, will you always be my teacher?" Maya glances at William, uncertainty flickering across her face. In her experience, good things are temporary. William sets down his glass, his voice firm and warm. "Emily, Maya isn't just your teacher. She's family, and family doesn't leave." Maya's eyes glisten. Emily beams, and in that moment, in a mansion that once felt like a museum, something precious takes root. Belonging. Outside, the sun sets over Silicon Valley, but inside, something new is rising. 2 years later, the ballroom of the Grand Hyatt sparkles with light and possibility. The Miller Maya Educational Foundation's opening gala is in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm glows over tables filled with educators, philanthropists, and families whose lives have been quietly transformed. At the center of it all, 20 children, the foundation's first cohort, sit dressed in their finest, eyes bright with futures that once seemed impossible. William stands at the edge of the room, watching Maya take the stage. She wears an elegant emerald dress, her natural hair styled in graceful twists. She's no longer the woman in the uniform, invisible in plain sight. She's become exactly who she was always meant to be. "I spent years being invisible," Maya begins, her voice steady and clear. "I had credentials, passion and dreams, but people only saw my job title, never the person behind it. Then one man finally saw me. Not because he was extraordinary, but because he was finally willing to look. She pauses, finding William in the crowd. That's what we do here. We look, we see, we believe. Because genius isn't rare, it's just often overlooked. The audience erupts in applause. Among them sit 20 children from forgotten neighborhoods, kids whose teachers had labeled them difficult, or average, or unfocused. Now they're thriving under the guidance of credentialed educators who, like Maya, had been pushed to the margins by systemic barriers. Emily sits among these children, not elevated above them, but beside them, just another 10-year-old being challenged to reach her potential. She's teaching a younger boy basic algebra, using the exact patient tone Maya once used with her. Later, in a quiet corner, away from the celebration, William finds Maya staring out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asks. Maya smiles. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. 20 children this year, 50 next year. In 5 years, maybe hundreds. I spent my entire life measuring success by market cap and profit margins." William says softly, "You taught me the only metric that matters. How many lives did you lift?" Before Maya can respond, a small voice interrupts them. "Excuse me, Miss Maya?" A young black girl, no more than 7, stands before them, nervously twisting her dress. "My teacher says I'm not good at math, but I want to be an engineer. Can you help me?" Maya kneels down, eye level with the child, and sees herself reflected back. The same hunger, the same doubt, the same spark waiting to ignite. "Yes," Maya says, her voice thick with emotion. "And let me tell you something important. Your teacher is wrong. You can be anything you dream of being." The girl's face transforms, hope blooming where uncertainty once lived. William watches this moment, this passing of the torch, and feels something shift inside him, the final piece of his transformation clicking into place. In the 2 years since that shocking discovery, everything has changed. Emily now teaches younger children using Maya's methods, her confidence infectious. William splits his time between his company and the foundation, finally finding the balance that had eluded him his entire life. Maya's younger siblings attend college on foundation scholarships, breaking cycles that seemed unbreakable. Even Emily's former school reached out, requesting a partnership with the foundation. William's response was polite but firm. "Perhaps when you're ready to look beyond pedigree and see actual potential." 3 weeks after the gala, on a quiet Tuesday evening, William arrives home from the office. He follows the sound of excited voices to the study, the same room where this journey began. Through the doorway, he sees them, Maya at the whiteboard, Emily beside her, both absorbed in calculations. They're working on orbital mechanics, equations arcing across the board like poetry. William doesn't announce himself. He simply watches from the threshold, the same threshold where he once stood, frozen in shock. But now he sees clearly. This is his greatest investment, his truest success, his real legacy. Maya looks up, catches his eye, and smiles, a smile of belonging, of family, of home. "Daddy, come help us." Emily waves enthusiastically. "We're trying to calculate orbital mechanics for a satellite launch." William laughs, stepping into the room. "I'm terrible at physics." Emily grins, echoing the words that have become their family mantra. "That's okay. Miss Maya says every mistake is just proof you're trying." William sits down at the table between his daughter and the woman who saved them both. The whiteboard is covered in equations. Emily's notebook is filled with careful calculations. Maya's guidance is patient and brilliant. For the first time in his life, William Miller is exactly where he belongs. And in that moment, surrounded by equations and laughter and love, he understands the most important formula of all. Humility plus compassion equals a life worth living. If this story touched your heart, remember that Maya's story is repeated in countless homes. Brilliant people, working jobs that don't reflect their potential, gifted children being overlooked because they don't fit conventional molds. True wealth isn't measured by what we own, but by how many lives we lift. Look around you. Someone extraordinary might be invisible in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally see them.